Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, Patrick Kenny. You can follow me on all of my social medias at Patrick Kenny, Kenney _ on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at GSMC _ baseball. Please rate, subscribe, review, do all that fun stuff. We love to hear from y'all. We love to interact with y'all. So go ahead, find out all that fun stuff. And help us grow this show with y'all, and we really appreciate that. So today I have an interesting show for you. So we're gonna start off the show with going over really what's going on with the Angels. Yeah, they did win the other day against Cleveland, and Ohtani had a night to remember for sure. Cleveland has dropped 4 straight, so they're struggling a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the Angels, who they should go get to improve, and then after that, we're also going to be going over some stats and standing updates, and then we're going to end today's show with some pretty interesting baseball theories that I've found. So, just to start off, we're going to go over some Shohei Ohtani and just a little bit of Shohei Ohtani stuff. So the Angels are 5-5 out of their last 10 and have won 2 straight. Now Ohtani was magnificent last night for me, so that would be Monday, May 17th. Ohtani hit 2 home runs that were just ridiculous, that you weren't even close to the strike zone, and took them both out. It was honestly pretty incredible if I do say so myself. He hit a home run that was on a pitch that was 4 feet above the ground. It was well above the strike zone. It was the second highest pitch anybody has homered on this year by about 0.3 inches. So I mean that's really awesome what he's doing. He hit a home run that was obviously super high last night against the Cleveland Indians, and then a couple nights ago he also hit one that was basically in the dirt. This dude goes golfing, he's swinging a sword, it doesn't matter. He's just a freaking beast on the mound, and with the bat. It feels right now. It feels like Shohei Ohtani is just playing Road to the Show in Major League or MLB's in the game, the show 21, where you can play as a two-way player, similar to Shohei Ohtani, and I think that's probably why they added that component to the game. It's just really, really interesting to see. I mean, Cleveland obviously has also dropped 4 straight, and they're not doing great right now, but the fact that the Angels were able to sort of capitalize on the on Cleveland's misfortune yesterday is kind of interesting to say the least. I mean, they kind of have opposite records right now, but they did also beat Boston, who's one of the best teams in baseball right now, in their most recent game, or in their most recent series to finish that game. And they also, I mean, they did lose the series, but they played the Red Sox pretty close in this past series. Other than on Saturday, May 15th, where they just gave up 9 runs. Since then, aside from that game, out of their last 4 or 5, or out of their last 3 games, not including the game where they gave up 9 runs, of course, they're not their pitching staff isn't doing terrible, but right now their pitching staff overall is the worst in baseball. They have a team ERA that is a 5.29 ERA. So that means every game they're giving up an average of over 5 runs almost every time they go out there. And even though like offensively they're doing really well, like offensively they are in terms of OPS, the Angels are top 10. They're number 8 right now with the 724 team OPS. And if you go to average, it's even higher. Their team average so far this year is a 251, which puts them in 6th. They're hitting really, really well. It's just the fact that they're not, they don't have very many RBIs. They are decent enough in home runs. But they're just not hitting. Their pitching is forcing them to have to try and out-hit their own pitching, and that's hard to do in baseball. And that's the reason. I mean, that's the biggest reason why they're struggling and where they are right now. And I think that obviously they are not trying to waste they're not trying to waste at all, like either Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani's career, but we have probably the greatest player of all time, and in Mike Trout, who's having a fantastic season so far this year, and you also have our modern day Babe Ruth and Shohei Ohtani, and it feels this way. It doesn't mean that it is this way, but it feels this way that the Angels are kind of wasting Mike Trout, and it's just kind of sad. It just kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like it's just not very fun to watch. To watch the Angels kind of waste away the careers of two what could be once in a lifetime opportunities to see. Now, granted, while Mike Trout has been struggling the last few games, he still has a top 10 average. He's hitting .333 on the year. He has a .391 on base percentage and a .627 slugging percentage. His OPS is well above 1,000. And Shohei Ohtani right now is the league leader in home runs, and he's also doing really, really well pitching the ball this year as well. Like, he's 1-0 in the 5 games that he started. Granted, he's only pitched 25 and 2/3 of an inning, or 2/3 of an inning, but he has 40 strikeouts and only has a 2.1 ERA. So what that means is every time he's going out on the mound, he's putting his team into a very good position to win the game, and then when they have to take him out, and if he doesn't go, if they don't keep him in the lineup, so to speak, like the other day he finished pitching, he threw about 88 pitches and then ended up playing right field for the rest of the game because since he was the starting pitcher, if he's going to go into the field, it removes the DH, and then they sort of have to play like a National League kind of game. And the Angels don't want to do that very often, so when when Ohtani does go out and pitch, then he is he's just sort of out of luck to try and give himself some more run support. And what has been happening with the Angels is that he is getting into that 5th inning or getting through that 5th inning and then coming out of the game, and then the bullpen is just letting them down. It's not fair to any of these teams, obviously, but obviously it's not fair to any of these teams, but it's also not really like the players' fault. I mean, obviously the pitchers, like, you want your pitchers to be doing well, but it's not great right now when your best person's ERA is let's see, hang on. When your best pitcher's ERA is Chris Rodriguez, who has a 2.30 ERA, or Tony Watson, who has a 2.03 ERA, those are your 2 best relievers, but neither one of them, or at least ERA wise, those are probably 2 of your better pitchers on the team, and they don't even have 30 innings combined with them right now. But when you go and look at somebody like Shohei Ohtani, who has pitched in 5 games and has pitched 25 innings and only has a 2.10 ERA, but then you go and look at their more used reliever, which their most used reliever right now is Mike Myers, and he's pitched in 20 games. He has pitched 20 innings. He's given up 19 hits, 10 runs, and 5 home runs. And he's only struck out 29 batters, walking 9. His whip is a 140. Opponents are hitting 241 off of him, and his ERA is a 4.5. That's terrible. You can't have your best relief pitcher, the guy that you go to more than anybody else, and have him having a 4.50 ERA. That can't be your best guy. That can be a very good option in your bullpen, but it can't be your best guy. The next best or most used relief pitcher is Steve Kashek, who has pitched in 18 games. He's only pitched in 15 and a third innings. He's given up 18 hits, 12 runs. 8 of them are earned, though. I will say that there is a big difference between runs given up and runs earned against you. So 8 earned runs, 12 runs total, and 12 walks. I mean, granted, he has struck out 15 batters, but he has a 4.70 ERA. And Alex Collado is the third most used reliever out of the bullpen for the Angels, and he has a 4.30 ERA in the 17 games that he's been used, and he's only pitched in 14 and 2/3 of an inning anyway. He's given up 16 hits, 8 runs, 7 of them earned. He's given up only 1 home run, which is good that he's not letting the ball get out of the park, but he's still given up 7 runs in 14 innings and 12 walks and 15 strikeouts. So he's just putting himself in bad situations, and that is a guy that you can potentially fix. I read Kashek's walk rate there. Kashek has given up 12. But Alex Collado has only walked 2 batters, but he's still given up 7 runs in that time frame, which means he's getting hit pretty well. Opponents right now are hitting 262 off of him. 262, and they're hitting 286 off of Kashek. That's not good at all, and the Angels are definitely going to have to go and get somebody at the deadline. But the question is, who are they going to be able to go get? If they really want to be buyers, and if they are in a position to where, even if they are, say, they're in the cellar, or they're in 4th place out in the AL West, there's still a possibility of them getting back into it. There is still so much baseball to be played left after the All-Star break that it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter really where you are in the standings, because anything can turn on literally just on a dime. Like, think about the Red Sox a few years ago when they won the World Series. They were, I believe, either in 4th or 5th in the AL East that year, and going into September, they just were one of the worst teams in baseball, and then ended up winning basically the entire month, and came back and ended up making the playoffs, ended up winning the World Series. I might be thinking of the Washington Nationals. I don't think I am, but they're both red teams from the Northeast-ish area, and I might have confused them a little bit, but the point stands. Anything can happen in baseball, especially if you get hot at the right time. And if you are the Angels and you go out and get a couple of really, really key pieces, like this is a piece that I would really love to see. I would really, really love to see the Angels go get, and that's Richard Rodriguez out of Pittsburgh. So far this year, he's doing really, really well. He's pitched in 17 games. He has 6 saves on the year. He has a 2-0 record, a .53 ERA. Out of 17 innings pitched, he only has 14 strikeouts, but his whip is a .41 right now. Over his last 7 games, his ERA is kind of high for him. He's 1-0 in his last 7 games. He's pitched in obviously all 7 of those games. He has 2 saves, 6 and a 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, and a 1.35 ERA. Would you like to know who on the Angels has pitched in at least 7 games and has an ERA anywhere close to that? There's nobody there. The one person that there is maybe a comparison for is, everybody on the Angels that has pitched at least 7 games, other than the other ones that I've already named, have pretty much started, except for Raisel Iglesias, who has a 4.80 ERA out of his 16 starts this year. Or, you could go with Junior Guevara, who has pitched in 13 games and has a 6 ERA. Now, Raisel Iglesias is their closer right now, and he did a very good job last year with the Cincinnati Reds, but it doesn't look like he's doing anything remotely similar to what he was doing last year with the Reds, or the last few seasons with the Reds, honestly, because the last few seasons he's actually been one of the bright spots on that Cincinnati Reds team, and now after his departure and Trevor Bauer's, the Reds kind of seem a little lost in that. But another guy that I would really like to see, I think that the Angels could potentially get, because I think it would take a lot to go and get Richard Rodriguez, but another guy that they might be able to go get is Tanner Scott out of Baltimore. So far this year, he's pitched in 19 games. He has a 2-2 win-loss record, but a 2.16 ERA. He's pitched in 16 2/3 innings. He's struck out 20 batters. He's doing pretty well this year. He is about to reach arbitration, so any team is going to have to give up a little bit of a haul for him. But if you're looking for a guy that I think could be a really good piece, like an everyday kind of a guy for them, I think that Tanner Scott is a very good option for the Angels. I think that he's a fantastic option, mostly because the Angels need bullpen pitching more than they need anything else, even starting pitching, because their starters have been doing a decent enough job. Well, now, granted, is their starters' ERA anywhere or much better than their bullpen? No, but when it's actually a fairly similar ERA, and they really need to do just kind of a whole thing where they can go and get stuff or get somebody. Now, I would say that they should go get Kevin Guzman or Johnny Cueto from the Giants, but the Giants are doing too well this year. I think that they're going to be buyers at the trade deadline in a couple months, and at least as of right now, that's what I think is going to happen. And so they're not going to be able to go get a Kevin Guzman or a Johnny Cueto to improve their starting pitching, and they could go out and maybe try and get they could try and go get Matthew Boyd from the Tigers, who would be a pretty good starter for them. I think he would be able to fill in a little bit of. I think he'd be able to fill in a little bit of stuff. Or a decent. He'd be a decent number 2 for the Angels. They could go out and get Max Scherzer, but Scherzer's going to take a haul, and if you go out and get Max Scherzer, that's pretty much the only piece that you're going to be able to afford this year, and that's kind of really just what it comes down to, is that they're going to be really struggling. Another guy that they might be able to go get, but I don't love the idea of them going to get it, is German Marquez out of Colorado. He's probably the last guy we're going to be talking about this segment, but so far this year, he just hasn't been great. Granted, he's playing for a Rockies team that's one of the worst in baseball. But so far this year, he has a 5.56 ERA, which is about on par for the Angels, but he is only 2-4 out of his 9 starts that he's had this year. And that's a big issue. The other issue is, that's an issue for him because he's giving up a little bit too much for the Rockies to come in, but I think if you give him an Angels offense that's one of the best in baseball, and even though he's started 9 times, but he's only thrown 45 innings, but I think that he actually has a decent opportunity to potentially, if he were one of those guys, I think that he would be a guy that the Angels could not give up a lot of money for and still end up improving a little bit in starting pitching. So I think that they could potentially go out and get him, and then maybe go and get a Tanner Scott or Richard Rodriguez and spend a little bit more there, and then add a few other pieces here or there maybe. But the Angels bullpen and rotation just need a complete overhaul aside from like Shohei Ohtani. And it's going to take a lot to see what they can try and fix this for the rest of the year. But that's going to do it for this first segment. We're going to take a short break. We're going to talk about the standings update because I tend to take a little bit longer with that. And then we're going to get into a lot of stats talk after that. And then we're going to end today's baseball episode with some really interesting baseball theories. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. In the second segment, we're going to be talking about the standing updates, going over a little bit, and then if we have some more time toward the end, we'll start a little bit of the statistic update segment that I'm trying to save for this last one. I feel like I've kind of rushed through them the last few times I've done this to try and get the stats in there because I've talked a little bit too much about the actual standings and where teams are. But I think that's important because I want to make sure that everybody's team gets talked about at least a little bit, even if you're a Detroit Tiger fan. All right, so starting out in the AL East, I figure, actually, you know what? We'll do the AL West since we spent the last segment on the Los Angeles Angels. We'll work our way bottom to top. The Texas Rangers right now are 19-24 in the cellar right now by a half game. They are 6.5 games out of first place and 5 games out of the wild card spot right now. However, they are 3-7 in their last 10. It's not a fun time to just to be a Rangers fan right now, but the good news is that they're 19-24 and they have won their most recent game. Granted, they are currently in a series against the New York Yankees, which is a very tough matchup for them, but being only 6 games under 500 and considering you're only 6 games out of first place right now, that is, or 6.5. But considering that you are that close to 500, if you're a fan of any team in the AL West, you can't give up your hope just yet because this is a really tough division and all of these teams have relatively decent records, except for really the Angels, who are 18-22, which is only 4 games below 500 right now, but they are 6 games back out of first place still. If you're an Angels fan, you're 5-5 out of your last 10, you have won your most 2 recent games, and you're going up against a Cleveland Indians team that has so far, as of recording this on Tuesday, May 18th, then you're seeing a team that you're facing a team that is struggling their past 4 games or so. They got swept by the Seattle Mariners, and you're in a decent spot right now winning your last 2 games, but you're about to face the top half of that rotation in Cleveland, and that's not something that anybody really wants to do. But I think that the Angels are going to be decent enough this year. I think that even though last segment I kind of ripped their whole bullpen and their rotation, that's just something that they really need to go out and improve on, and that's an organizational feature. And that's something that's on the rest of the organization to go out and try and make improvements on. Seattle right now, they're 21-21, a solid 500. They're 4 games back out of first place. They're 4-6 out of their last 10. They were struggling quite a bit until they played the Cleveland Indians, and now they're in a series against Detroit. And Detroit is kind of hot right now. They're 6-4 out of their last 10, and they did win their most recent game against Seattle, who is 4-6 out of their last 10. They are 4 games back out of first place, but just 2.5 games back out of the wild card. And they're in a decent spot right now. This division is kind of getting a little bit closer right now, with Houston being in second at 24-17, only being a half game back out of first place, but being an entire game up on that wild card. And that's really, really important for where they are right now. And Houston's 8-2 out of their last 10, and they are on a 6-game winning streak, and that's very good for Houston. They're in a series right now against Oakland, and so when this episode comes out, Houston might be in first place by that half game. Oakland might be a game and a half up, or it could be it's a game and a half Oakland up going into this next game when it's released, and then all of a sudden Houston is just back to being a half game back. But as of right now, the Houston Astros are one of the best teams in baseball. They're on a 6-game winning streak, and they're 8-2 out of their last 10. And Oakland is sort of cooling off a little bit. They're 25-17. They're 6-4 out of their last 10, so that's still good, and they did win their most recent game. But going into this series against Houston is going to be very, very important for defining the rest of the standings, probably for the rest of the month in the AL West. Now, going up to the AL Central, Minnesota, they're awful right now. Like, I'm sorry if you're a Twins fan, and I know it's not fun listening to hearing how bad your team is, but you're 13-26 right now. Detroit is 15-26. They're an entire game ahead of Minnesota right now. I don't know what's going on with Minnesota. They're just not performing well. Their pitching staff is just abysmal. They're giving up so many runs, and their offense just isn't where it needs to be. It's not. So the Angels right now, we're going to go back to the Angels for a little bit. They have scored 180 runs, but they've given up 224. They have won 5 more games than Minnesota, who's only given up 211, which is 13 runs less, but they've scored 179. So both of these teams are actually kind of similar. Their offense is being forced to outperform their pitching staff, and that's really hard to do in baseball. You need your pitching staff to at least be competitive for any good offense to actually work, which is why you saw Cleveland in 2016 go so far, because even though they only had 3 starting pitchers, they used their bullpen to really set themselves up for and set themselves up really well in games. You also saw that in 2019 with the Nationals. When they got hot, their offense really wasn't that good, but they rode their stellar rotation and bullpen to a World Series victory, and that's what's so important. You have to have good pitching in the bigs. That is what it takes to win. Any team that, honestly, I can't remember a team that hasn't won a World Series, at least since I've been alive, that hasn't had at least a really decent rotation. Like, who was it? I mean, the Dodgers last year, they had probably the best rotation in the bigs at that point in time last year. Cincinnati was competitive. They couldn't hit the ball worth squat last year. Their batting average, their team batting average was the worst in Major League history to ever make the playoffs, but they rode a really good pitching staff and an extended playoff into that sort of situation. So if you're Minnesota, you got to go out and get either the same pitchers that I mentioned last segment, or try and find somebody else that is a good enough pitcher for you to go get and try and contend. But I don't expect much more out of Minnesota this year. Detroit's 15-26. They're 10.5 games back out of first place in the Central, but 8 games back out of the wild card. Minnesota also 11.5 games back out of first place and 9 games back out of the wild card. I don't remember if I mentioned that. Detroit, similar situation. Their pitching staff has given up 209 runs, and their offense is worse than Minnesota and the Angels. But as of late, their pitching staff has been doing a lot better, and because of that, they're 6-4 out of their last 10, and that's really, really important. In fact, they even beat Seattle, who had just swept the Cleveland Indians, who Cleveland obviously has a very good pitching staff, and Detroit doesn't have a great offense, but they're still winning more games than they're losing right now, and that's really good for Detroit. It's a good thing to see that your young guys are starting to get those reps and things like that. Kansas City, 18-22, 7 games out of first and 4.5 games back out of the wild card. They're 2-8 out of their last 10. And Kansas City, ever since they were the hottest team in baseball for that brief week, they have just kind of been awful. And what I once thought was going to be one of the more down to the wire division races. I thought it was going to be between the White Sox, Minnesota, and Cleveland. It looks like it's a two-man race right now, and Cleveland's 5-5 out of their last 10. Granted, they were very, very hot going into that last series against Seattle, but since then, they've kind of just cooled off completely, and they're starting to hit a little bit of a skid. They've lost 4 in a row, and that's not good, especially when the team in first place is 8-2 out of their last 10, and they're on a 2-game winning streak. So the White Sox are doing great. Cleveland's 3.5 out of first, but they're only a game back out of the wild card, and that's really, really important because Cleveland, for a while this year, they were kind of just not getting it, and then all of a sudden, after that Wade Miley no-hitter, they turned it on, and their offense started to get going again. Cleveland so far this year has given up the least amount of runs in the American League and almost the least amount of runs in all of baseball. They're top five in runs given up in all of baseball. And I'm kind of including the Mets here because they're starting to play they're starting to have played similar amounts of games. The Mets, however, they've only given up 130 runs, but Cleveland's only given up 150. I'm sorry, it's not the best in the American League, it's second best in the American League, right under the White Sox. The only difference between these two teams right now is that the White Sox have one of the best offenses in baseball. They have 216 runs scored this year, which is tied for second in the American League right now. That's amazing. And in fact, that's tied for second in all of baseball. They're tied with Houston right now with runs scored, and Boston is only 1 run ahead of both of them. But their run differential is by far the best in baseball. The White Sox run differential right now is plus 73. All right, I'm going to be honest. I didn't have faith in the White Sox earlier this year, and that's why I went with Minnesota or Cleveland to maybe come out of this. And I wasn't really too high on the White Sox, but it looks like I was just completely wrong. And you know what? That's okay. I was just wrong on this take, and that's fine because they're 25-15. They have the best winning percentage in the American League and actually in all of baseball. The next closest is the San Francisco Giants, who have a 610 winning percentage at 25-16, and the White Sox have a 625 winning percentage at 25-15. They're doing really great right now, and they get to play the worst team in the division right now in Minnesota. And that's awesome. You're loving that if you're a White Sox fan. Going out to the AL East, Baltimore is in last place at 17-23. They're 7 games back out of first and only 5.5 games back out of the wild card. They're 3-7 out of their last 10, which isn't great, but they did win their most recent game against Tampa Bay, and that's a huge win for them. Or excuse me, they didn't win their most recent game against Tampa Bay, but they did win their most recent game, and they're going into a series now against Tampa Bay. The Yankees currently in 4th place in the division. They're 2.5 games out of first place and a game back out of the wild card. They're 6-4 out of their last 10. They've lost 2 straight, which has dropped them down as far as they are. Even though they're just 2.5 games back, this is a close division race right now, and they're 22-19. If they were in the other 2 divisions in the AL Central, they would be or in the American League, they'd be second in the Central, and then they'd be third in the AL East. There are a lot of good teams right now in the American League, and nobody's really separating themselves ahead of anybody right now, except for really the White Sox. And the White Sox are kind of doing it in the weakest division in the American League right now. The Tampa Bay Rays right now, they're 23-19, a half game ahead of the Yankees for 3rd place in the division, 2 games back out of first and a half game out of that wild card spot. They're 6-4 out of their last 10, but are on a 4-game winning streak, and they're plus 20 right now in run differential, and they get to play Baltimore, who's minus 23 in run differential. So that could be really good for Tampa Bay. Pick up a quick series win, hopefully, if you're good, or if they're hopeful. And then you have the 2 juggernauts right now in the AL East just battling it out, Boston and Toronto. Toronto is a game and a half back. They're 22-17, a half game up on the Tampa Bay Rays for the wild card spot. And and a complete game up in position and standings and that wild card spot against the Yankees. They're going up against Boston, who's 25-17 right now. Boston's 6-4 out of their last 10. Toronto 7-3. Toronto is winners of their last 2. Boston lost their most recent game, but it's going to be a fun series to watch. And if you're not watching it, I really think that y'all need to be watching the series. It's going to be a lot of fun watching the Boston go down to Tampa, or I believe they're playing in Tampa, but go down to Tampa to play the Toronto Blue Jays. That's kind of funny. It's a weird year. But the New York Mets out in the AL East, they're in first place at 19-16. They've been in first place for a while, but they're 7-3 out of their last 10, won their most recent game, and they're a game up on the Philadelphia Phillies, who are 21-20. And they are 2 games back out of the wild card. They're 5-5 out of their last 10, but lost 2 of their most recent games, which isn't great. The Mets confuse me because they don't score any runs at all. They've only scored 122 runs this entire year. Yet they're the best team in the NL East by at least a game. They've only given up 130 runs this year, which is by far the best in Major League Baseball. Cleveland and the White Sox in the American League Central are probably the 2 closest in the American League. The next closest is San Diego, who's given up 137 runs so far this year in a lot more games, which is, I think, kind of impressive for San Diego. But Philly is a game back. They're not doing terrible right now. They're not doing great either. Atlanta is 19-22. They're 3 games out of first right now, 4 games out of the wild card. They're 4-6 out of their last 10 and losers of 2 straight. That's not great for Atlanta, and you're going up against the best team in the division who's kind of hot right now. I don't love Atlanta's chances in this series, but baseball's baseball. You never know what's going to happen. Miami is 18-22. They are 3.5 out of first place, 4.5 out of the wild card, 4-6 out of their last 10, but they did win their last game, and they're playing against Philadelphia, so that could be a good spot for them to try and jump up a little bit in division standings. Washington 16-21, 4 games out of first, 5 games out of the wild card. They're 4-6 out of their last 10, losers of their last 1. They're playing Chicago right now. Chicago's doing pretty good. They're pretty hot right now. Washington's definitely going to have to turn it around for it really fast if they're going to not be sellers here at the deadline coming up in 2 months. But still, they're going to have to turn it around pretty fast. The Central, Pittsburgh is in last place. They're in the cellar right now. They're 17-23, 5.5 out of first and the wild card, 4-6 out of their last 10, and they lost their most recent game. Cincinnati, they are 19-20. They're 3 games back out of first and the wild card. They are -1 in run differential, which is, that's kind of, they have a really good offense. Don't get me wrong. They have one of the best offenses in baseball, but also one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball as well. And they're falling into the trap that other teams in the American League are as well, like the Angels and Minnesota. And Colorado, they're being forced to out-hit themselves, kind of. And that's, like I said, it's not a recipe for any kind of success. The Cubbies are 500. They're 20-20. They're 2.5 out of first and out of the wild card. They're 6-4 right now, winners of their last 2, and they're +2 in run differential. They're going up against a Washington team that does have a decent pitching staff, but they're also just not playing well. They just don't hit the ball very well. So unfortunately for Washington, I don't expect them to do very well against the Cubs in this upcoming series. Milwaukee's 21-20. They're 2 games out of first and the wild card. They're 4-6 out of their last 10, but they did win their most recent game against Kansas City. And St. Louis is in first place with a record of 23-18. They did lose their last series. They got completely swept, but they're still 2 games up in first place. So that's really good news for St. Louis. Even though they had a rough series, they're still in first place by sole possession by a couple of games, so they can turn it around right here against Pittsburgh, and that's going to be very important for them. Out in the NL West, Colorado and Arizona, 4th and 5th. 15-27 for Colorado. Arizona 18-24, 10.5 and 7.5 games back respectively out of first place, and 5.5 games back and 8.5 games back out of the wild card. Colorado has lost 3 straight, Arizona 2 straight. Neither team is very good this year, both well in the negatives in run differential, and they're playing the Colorado Rockies are playing San Diego, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are playing the Dodgers right now. So not great news for either of those teams. The Dodgers, 23-18, 2 games out of first. They're 6-4 out of their last 10, and they did win their most recent game. They have that second wild card spot, which is very good. They are a half game, San Diego is a half game up a game and a half up against the Dodgers for that wild card spot, and they are only a half game back out of first place. They're 25-17, one of the best teams in baseball as of recently. They're 7-3 out of their last 10 and have won 4 straight games, and they get to play Colorado, which is very nice. They get to play them at home too, which is always better. Their home record is 13-10. Their road record right now is 12-7. So technically they do play a little bit better on the road, but I think that this is a really good situation for San Diego to be in. And then number 1, the most surprising team in baseball, I think, San Francisco, 25-16, a half game up against the Padres in first place. They're 7-3 out of their last 10 and have won 2 straight. They're plus 36 in run differential, which is just crazy because nobody had expected San Francisco to be this good. It's honestly so crazy to me that San Francisco is still this good this late into the season, and they're going to be in a tough matchup at Cincinnati, but I don't count them out, especially against Cincinnati, and don't forget about this team. This is a good team. So we're going to take a short break, and then I'm going to go over a lot of stats, and we're going to break down some of those and see where some players should be, where they might not be. And then after that, we're going to be talking about some baseball theories, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser right here. Babe Ruth might have actually been at least partially black.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to this third segment of today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, just want to let you know that I really appreciate y'all for listening, taking your time out of y'all's busy day to listen to me talk about baseball for some reason. And I appreciate all of y'all for doing that. Whoever you may be, whoever you are, give us a follow, follow and review on whatever platform that you prefer listening to your podcasts on. We definitely appreciate it. In this segment, we're going to be talking about a lot of stats that we're just going to be talking about some stats right now. So I figure I'll give you all the top 10 teams in batting average to start out with, and we'll kind of work our way from there. Los Angeles, the Dodgers, they have the 10th best average with a team hitting 244. Minnesota is in 9th with their team hitting 245. Colorado and the Rockies and the Blue Jays are currently tied for 7th in average, hitting 246. And then the Angels kind of hop up there. They're hitting 251, and that's important. And we already talked about how the Angels why their struggles are the way that they are, even though they have such a good offense. In 5th place is the Washington Nationals. that is kind of a surprising thing, considering that they just don't score a lot of runs. And when you think of a team average that's that high, and when your team on base percentage is a 320, you'd expect your team to be doing a little bit better, and they're just not right now. And that's kind of what it is. They're just not playing that well, and they kind of need to figure it out a lot sooner rather than later. Up next in fourth place, or also I should say tied for fourth place, is the Cincinnati Reds, who are hitting .252 as a team. They have a .329 team on base percentage, and they have 56 home runs so far this year, which is among the league leaders. I'm not going to give it away just yet because we'll talk about it here in a second. But the White Sox and the Red Sox are tied for second with a 264 average, and then the Houston Astros are the best hitting team in baseball right now with a 266 average. Team OPS are on the best on base percentage in baseball. Number 10 is the Yankees at 318, then the Cubbies at 320, also tied for the Yankees 317, the Cubbies 318, and then tied for seventh is the Nationals and the Mets. They both have a 320 on base percentage. And then you go to number 6, which is the Boston Red Sox. They're hitting 324. Then you go to San Diego, who is getting on base at a rate of 329. Then Cincinnati as well has the same average. They're both tied currently for fourth place in batting average. And then you go to Houston, who has the third best batting average right now, or on base percentage, I keep saying batting average, I don't know why. On base percentage, they are getting on a rate at 1/3, so 1 every 3 batters coming up is usually getting on base. That's a 333 on base percentage. That's crazy good for a team. The Dodgers are even higher with a 347 in second, and then the White Sox currently in first place with a 349 on base percentage. That is really, really good. Going into home runs, team home runs. Starting off at number 10 is the Minnesota Twins. They have 52 home runs so far this year. Then the Rangers, Cardinals, Athletics, and Red Sox are all tied for 6th with 53 home runs. That's crazy. That's a good amount of teams that all have 53 home runs so far. And then the Yankees, Giants, and Cincinnati Reds are all tied for second with 56 home runs. And then apparently Atlanta has just been hitting baseballs way out of the ballpark, and I just haven't been seeing it because they have 60 team home runs so far this year, which is crazy. Leading the league in strikeouts, however, we're just going to start at number 5. At number 5, the Milwaukee Brewers, who are hitting a team .214 average and have 409 team strikeouts. Up next is the Philadelphia Phillies and the Rangers. They're tied for 3rd. I don't think it's fair to really throw the Rangers in here because they have Joey Gallo, and Joey Gallo kind of just strikes out a lot. And Joey Gallo is a contributor to this, to say the least. Both teams have 420 strikeouts, and that's a lot of strikeouts. That's kind of too many strikeouts. After that is the Tigers. They have 324 strikeouts, and then a team that is, you'd probably be surprised that is here unless you watch this team relatively often, and that's the Tampa Bay Rays. They have 14 more strikeouts than the next closest person. Or next closest team, I should say. They have struck out 438 times in 42 games. That is crazy. Our league leader in least amount of strikeouts is the Houston Astros. They have 289. The Mets have only struck out 259 times. The Nationals, 309. The Blue Jays and Kansas City and the Padres all have 328. Going over to pitching. The best ERA in all of baseball will go 5-1. Right now, it's the White Sox with a team ERA of 3.29. They follow the San Francisco Giants as a 3.28 team ERA. The New York Mets are in 3rd with a 3.23 ERA. I've been telling y'all all year that this Mets pitching staff is very good, including their bullpen, and it definitely goes to show that they're a league leader right now. And the other two teams really shouldn't come as a surprise. It's the Dodgers. They have a 3.11 team ERA, and then the San Diego Padres. They have a 2.79 ERA, team ERA. Only team that has a team ERA below 3, and they did it by a decent amount of points so far this year. That's really, really important. League leaders in strikeouts for teams from the pitching side. The Los Angeles Angels are in 5th with 409 strikeouts. The Dodgers are in 4th with 415. The Yankees are in 3rd with 425. Then the Padres have 430 in second place. And then in Milwaukee has the best strikeout rate out of any pitching staff with 432 strikeouts so far this year. That is important because when we go back over to hitting and we look at the strikeouts, they're also in the top 5 at 409. And then you go back over to pitching and they've struck out 432 batters. That is a weird stat, to say the very least. Their team can't hit the ball, but it's okay because neither can the teams that they're facing. That's just kind of funny to me a little bit. I really don't know, I really can't find any real correlation between the two, other than the fact that I guess it's just really hard to put the ball in play if you're either on the Brewers or you're facing the Brewers. That's kind of what it looks like right now. Going to our players. Let's look at our league leaders in average. Our top 5 are Jared Walsh in 5th with a 3.43 average. Xander Bogaerts is in 4th with a 3.44 average. Jesse Winker out of Cincinnati definitely putting together a MVP case, like MVP caliber season for him. Definitely is going to be an all-star if he's able to keep this up. He's hitting 346 so far out of 33 games, and he's doing so hitting the heck out of the baseball too. He has 7 home runs and 10 doubles. He has a triple, 22 RBIs. He's doing really, really well for Cincinnati, and he's a huge part of that offense. Yordan Alvarez is currently in 2nd. The DH for Houston has played in 33 games. He also has 10 doubles and 7 home runs as well. And he is hitting at a rate of 348. And then Yermin Mercedes is in 1st, hitting 346 out of his 36 games. He has 7 doubles and 6 home runs, 25 RBIs for him. Jared Walsh has 30, and Xander Bogaerts has 26. We'll talk a little bit more about RBIs here in a second. League leader in on-base percentage at number 5 is Chris Taylor, the utility player for the Los Angeles Dodgers, hitting just 288, but getting on base at a clip of 425, which is amazing. Bryce Harper is in 4th with a 436 on-base percentage. I guess that's what happens when you have 24 walks and 35 hits so far this year. Max Muncy is just 0.01 points ahead of him with a 347 on-base percentage in 3rd place. And then in 2nd is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who is currently getting on base at a rate of 440, and that's pretty high. And then Mike Trout, still the league leader in OPS with a 466 on base percentage. That is just awesome. Mike Trout is doing amazing this year. Our league leader in OPS, P as in Patrick. OBS is what we just talked about. League leaders in OPS, and that is Chris Bryant in 5th with a 1,017. Nicholas Castellanos in 4th with a 1,018. JD Martinez with a 1,025. And then Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in 2nd with a 1,049. And then Mike Trout is just the best player in baseball still. He has his OPS is a 1,090. That's 51 points higher than the next closest person. That is crazy. That is crazy. That's like Yermin Mercedes. Yermin Mercedes hits 364. The next, basically, Alex Bregman, who is hitting .311 and is 15th in overall batting average. That's the equivalent right there of how close those two are. Mike Trout and number 2 Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's how close those two are. Our league leader in strikeouts so far this year, Joey Gallo. We already talked about him. 60 strikeouts in number 1. Matt Chapman is in second place, I should say, with 56. Eugenio Suarez for Cincinnati has 55. Javier Baez and Nick Goodrum round out the top 5 in strikeouts with 54 and 52 apiece. Solid numbers from everybody around there. Our league leader in walks, starting in at number 5, Joey Gallo, 28 walks so far this year. At number 4, Robbie Grossman, he has 29. That's not a terrible strikeout to walk ratio. He has walked 29 times, has struck out 40. I'll do Joey Gallo here in a second. Yasmani Grandal in third with 33 walks, 27 strikeouts. That's one of the best there. Carlos Santana, a little bit better than that in that walk to strikeout kind of a thing. He has 34 walks as opposed to his 26 strikeouts this year. He has almost as many walks as he does hits right now. Carlos Santana, 35 hits so far this year, 34 walks. That's great. Great job. He's doing a good job in Kansas City right now, and that's really, really important. And then Max Muncy leads the league so far in walks this year with 37 and 40 strikeouts. Joey Gallo, by the way, I mentioned I talked to him talk about him a few seconds ago. He has walked 28 times and struck out 60. Now, if you're not great at math like me, I'd had to do it on a calculator, but he has struck out 32 more times than he has walked. That's more than he has hits. He has 31 hits this year. What is going on? Joey Gallo confuses me as a baseball player because I know he's really good. Our league leaders in home runs, tied for 5th, Jose Ramirez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Aldis Garcia, Freddie Freeman, and Rafael Devers are all tied for 5th with 11. Aaron Judge, Mitch Haniger, and Ronald Acuna Jr. are all tied for 2nd with 12. And then Shohei Ohtani is leading the league in home runs hit so far with 13. What is baseball? What is actually going on in baseball? I don't even know anymore. It's a confusing sport, and I'm just baffled at what Shohei Ohtani is. Our league leaders in RBIs. So Yuri Gurriel, I'm going to throw him in there because he's in 7th. But Shohei Ohtani, Trey Muncy, Jesus Aguilar are all 3 tied for 4th with 32. And then Jose Abreu and JD Martinez are tied for 2nd with 33. And Rafael Devers currently leading the league in RBIs right now with 34. Now going over to pitching. League leader in ERA, Jacob deGrom. Not going to talk about him. He's going to be out for a little bit. John Means, who is not being too slick about his usage of what is technically an illegal substance, but Major League Baseball doesn't care about it. So he is doing very well this year. Has a 121. Actually, I might talk about that in the next episode. So stay tuned. Wait for my next episode to come out, probably Sunday. And I'll talk a little bit about how pitchers are getting such good spin rate right now. So in 5th right now, Trevor Rogers at 184 ERA. Hugh Darvish is in 4th with a 181 ERA. Brandon Woodruff with a 164 ERA. And then John Means, like I said, a 121 ERA. So far, our league leader in innings pitched. In 5th, Hugh Darvish with 54 2/3 out of his 9 starts. Tyler Glasnow and Trevor Bauer tied for 3rd with 57 1/3 innings apiece. Garrett Cole out of his 9 starts in 2nd place with 57 2/3 innings. And then Shane Bieber so far is doing a great job right now with Cleveland. He's pitched almost 60 innings, 59 2/3 innings out of his 9 starts. That's awesome. If you're a Cleveland Indian fan, you got to love Shane Bieber going out there and putting in work. Even though his ERA isn't great, it's not where Trevor Bauer or Garrett Cole or even Tyler Glasnow or Hugh Darvish are, but it's still not terrible. It's still not terrible. It's a respectable ERA. It's a 3.17 ERA so far this year. And then we're going to go over and talk about strikeouts and talk about all of these guys a little bit more. So Freddie Peralta and Hugh Darvish are tied for 5th in strikeouts with 69 so far this year in their 9 starts. Freddie Peralta actually has pitched in 9 games. He only has 8 starts. And Trevor Bauer is in 4th with 77. Tyler Glasnow and Garrett Cole are all tied for 2nd with 85. And then Shane Beiber has 92 strikeouts. He has 92 strikeouts in 9 games. That's a lot. That's a lot of strikeouts. We've never seen anything like that before. We've seen guys like Garrett Cole and Trevor Bauer have just absolutely monster years and feel like they strike out everybody. But Shane Bieber is actually kind of striking out everybody. If they don't get a hit or a walk off of him, they're probably striking out. I mean, it's crazy. It's actually crazy right now. Our league leader in saves and save opportunities is Mark Melican with 14 apiece. Jake McGee has had 12 save opportunities for San Francisco. He's gotten 10 of those. Ian Kennedy and Alex Reyes, as well as Cesar Valdez, all have had 11 opportunities to save a game. Cesar Valdez for Baltimore has blown 3 of those, unfortunately. Ian Kennedy and Alex Reyes, both 11 for 11. Cesar Valdez, 8 for 11 so far. Aroldis Chapman, he doesn't get many opportunities to go out and save games, but he's pitched in 15 games. He has a 2-0 record. He's 9 for 9 in save opportunities, and it has only given up 4 hits, no earned runs, and walked just 5 while striking out 31 in 15 innings. It's kind of crazy to see his strikeout rate per 9 innings is 18.6. That is one of the best strikeout rates in baseball right now. If you switch it though on like MLB, like the stats page and stuff, then it switches it to pitcher, or like basically starting pitchers. But Shane Bieber, I'm counting him since he's only had 8 starts, by the way, or 8 quality starts, I should say. But he has a strikeout rate of 13.88. Tyler Glasnow and Garrett Cole, they have 13.27 for Cole and 13.34. DeGrom has a higher strikeout rate now, but he also hasn't pitched in a while, and that's kind of why he only has 40 innings so far on the year. But that's going to do it here for the 3rd segment. In the next segment, we're going to be talking about some really interesting facts that you might not know about baseball, and we'll be right back in just a second.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome back, everybody, to what I think is going to be one of the more thoughtful pieces of at least my tenure so far at GSMC here. We're going to be going over some pretty interesting theories, and whether or not they're true is, obviously undetermined. I'm going to start off with this Babe Ruth one that claims that he could have potentially, at least handled some elements of the color black in him, and that's I mean, that's definitely interesting. And then I also found a website that a page that Golf Digest had done, and they put together a very interesting amount of like theories about baseball prior to 2017 that are too crazy to like really just straight up ignore. That article is by Golf Digest from October 31st, 2017 by Coleman Bentley. And then this one I found actually on Twitter and by a man named Antonio Hardy at Slangdini, Slangdini on Twitter if you guys want to go check him out. So it's a post, and it's a picture of Babe Ruth hanging by a bunch of black men prior to a game, and it says, he goes, "All I know is Ty Cobb hated black people and hated Babe Ruth, whose nickname was N-word lips in Major League Baseball, and daughter claims that he was barred from being a coach because he would have used black players much prior to Jackie." And so this is actually a post from NJ.com, and basically it says, Babe Ruth's daughter, Yankees great, didn't get managing jobs because he would have broken the color barrier. And according to Babe Ruth's daughter, the Yankees legend wanted to be a manager after his playing days ended, but it wasn't his behavior off the field that prevented him from getting a job. Julia Ruth Stevens, at the time, was 97 years old. The daughter of the late slugger told the New York Times' Peter Karosty her theory. There were some fear that Ruth would have let black players on his roster. Quote, "Daddy would have had blacks on his team, definitely," she said. "He really thought that he deserved to manage. Daddy knew baseball. He always felt that he would be a better manager than Joe McCarthy. He always talked about that." Stevens also spoke about her father, praising Satchel Paige. Quote, "Youth was known to frequent New York City's Cotton Club and befriended black athletes and celebrities," Kurotis wrote. He once brought Bill Robinson, a tap dancer and actor known as Bojangles, into the Yankees clubhouse. Robinson also was with Ruth during the 1932 World Series in Chicago and at the game when Ruth was said to have called his home run. When Ruth died in August of 1948, Robinson was an honorary pallbearer. Jackie Robinson would end up breaking the color barrier in 1947, about a decade after Babe Ruth retired. Babe Ruth, this was also said 1 month after, in October 8th, 1923, 2 days before the World Series. Ruth was a guest of honor at the Harlem fundraiser for benefit of Mothers AME Zion Church. Other white celebrities had similarly committed to attend, but only Babe kept his word. He donated not only his valuable time, but also contributed some autographed balls along with $20 out of his pocket. For Babe Ruth, this was not an unusual display of unbiased charity. During his fall barnstorming tour, after his celebrated 1927 season, the Bambino visited the Guardian Hotel, home for Negroes, in Kansas City on October 15th. There was a delightful photo of him that in the event showing a beaming Ruth holding a black infant in his arms. In addition, he personally hosted 50 orphans from that institution during the exhibition game on the same date. And this is what Ty Cobb once said about Babe Ruth. Ty Cobb was just a straight up racist, and said this one time. So Cobb once refused to stay in the same hunting cabin as with Babe Ruth, who was rumored to be of mixed blood. Said Cobb, quote, "I've never bedded down with a N-word, and I'm not gonna start now." And apparently the whole league thought that he was. This is also from that thread that I had mentioned prior. Speaker and Joe Wood were best friends, and they both hated Ruth during the 1.5 seasons they played together in Boston. So this is about this is about a few former players that played with Babe Ruth in Boston. They all played together in Boston and mocked Ruth as, quote, the big pig, the big baboon, and Tarzan the ape man in quieter moments in the locker room. One of them would bellow, "Baboon." It drove Ruth nearly to tears. Babe actually liked being called Tarzan until he learned what the name meant. He certainly knew by January 1918, when the first movie made by Edgar Rice Burroughs' best-selling stories opened. The New York Times described the film as Tarzan of the Apes as, quote, the story of a primal man, or rather of a man brought up among apes, endowed with many of their abilities. After Joe Bush saw the movie, he would provoke Ruth by singing, "Big Babe Ruth was picking his tooth with the limb of a coconut tree." The old taunt of "N-word lips" resurfaced as players noticed Ruth's olive complexion and his broad, flat nose. Many players, not only on the Red Sox, thought Ruth was racially mixed ancestrally. Babe Ruth apparently dealt with a lot of racist things, and there's a picture that is part of it, and it's colorized from this thread, and the color actually the color is definitely not helpful to Babe Ruth if he were trying to appear white. And it says the guy who had posted this thread, the color actually makes me think one guy was trying to say Babe Ruth is dark as my hand, LMAO. That's what this guy's tweet says, and it actually kind of looks like it. And there are much more pictures of Babe Ruth, and it definitely looks like there was a possibility, a very, very real possibility, that his parents were, or at least one of his parents was mixed ancestrally, and that, it doesn't make what Jackie Robinson or other players during that time went through any less significant at all. But I think it's actually really interesting to find out that if that were something that were actually happening, that's something that needs more attention. If Babe Ruth, because one of the criticisms of Babe Ruth is that, we can't compare him to players from the 40s or 50s or even nowadays, because they didn't play against players that were the same colors or that were different colors, and that is a legitimate debate in baseball right now, and that would be something that is very interesting to find out if it were the opposite case. I'm not here to speculate. I'm just here to kind of bring you guys theories in this one. So let me know if you guys actually like these. And if there are, I'll do my research and try and find some more. But so we're just going to go over a few other ones, not really that interested. Not interesting, but not as in depth. We're just kind of read through a couple situations and see if they're potentially real, potentially not. So there are a lot of people that have or a lot of things that are pretty interesting. So the Orioles canceled a game one time for lighting malfunction to supposedly save Cal Ripken Jr.'s streak. The theory is that on August 14th, 1997, a little more than a year before the official end of Cal Ripken's 2,632 consecutive games played streak, Ripken called Orioles management to let them know that he wasn't going to make that evening's game. An intrepid Orioles employee took the matters into their own hands, sabotaging the Camden Yards lights in a successful attempt to postpone the game. But why was Cal MIA? Rumor has it he was busy beating the absolute crap out of Kevin Costner after catching the Field of Dreams star in bed with his wife. The truth, probability. No Kevin Costner, very likely. With Kevin Costner, it's significantly less likely. Major League Baseball players that this is Golf Digest doing it. So they doubt that Kevin Costner was there. It makes the story a little bit less likely, but if like just generally that is not the worst idea in the world. Major League Baseball and Players Union collide to prevent the Expos from winning the 1994 World Series. The theory: in 1994, the Montreal Expos were the best team in baseball, and in 1994, the World Series was not played for the first time since 1949 due to an allegedly orchestrated strike designed to rob the Expos of their last and best shot at winning a World Series. A purported response to the plummeting American TV ratings following the Toronto Blue Jays' back-to-back titles in 1992 and 1993. Many now view the strike as intentional or not. At the beginning, it was the beginning of the end for the Montreal Expos. Right, a little bit right after that, they would then sell the team to David Sampson and the future owner of the Marlins. I'm blanking on his name. Jeffrey something. It would sell the team to them, and then ultimately they would move from the Montreal Expos to the Miami Marlins, the then Florida Marlins, and then the owner of the Marlins would then go and buy the Red Sox, and Montreal would then be moved to the Washington, D.C. The truth is, it's unlikely. This was the 8th Major League Baseball work stoppage in the last 23 years up until that point, and that's a lot of bricklaying just to kind of keep a team out of the World Series. I don't necessarily view it that way. I think that I don't necessarily think that was a real possibility, but I don't really view it like that. But I could see how Expos fans would kind of feel slighted. They would definitely feel slighted. So, up next, Barry Bonds blacklisted. The theory: following a home run record-setting season in which he hit 276 with a 480 on-base percentage and a 565 slugging percentage with 28 home runs, 66 RBIs, and 132 walks, Barry Bonds wasn't invited to a single training camp the following year and was basically forced to retire. Bonds claims he was blacklisted by Major League Baseball for his involvement in the Balco scandal, and an independent arbitrator found no such evidence. Baseball's second biggest villain probably had it coming, but the issue remains unresolved to this day. The truth probability, it's probably likely. Like, Albert Pujols just was signed, and he hasn't hit nearly 276 in almost 3 seasons. In fact, he was hitting less than 200. Granted, he had hit 5 home runs already this year, but he just got signed to the Dodgers, and he doesn't have that history like Barry Bonds. You could also look at Alex Rodriguez, who after his contract was finished with the New York Yankees, just didn't get really any invites, even though he was still a productive player. So up next, Derek Jeter and his potentially rigged career-ending walk-off. I think this is going to be the last one that we're going to do today. But let me know if you guys want something else, or any, like, if you like this kind of content. I could definitely do some deep dives into some of these. But the theory, this is kind of an elaborate one. It's not necessarily the most likely. So, first, David Robertson, the closer for the Yankees at the time, it was supposed to, or is supposedly have grooved pitches to the Orioles, turning a relatively boring 5-2 waltz into a dramatic 5-5 tie. Then in the bottom of the 9th, Orioles reliever Evan Meek also allegedly was in cahoots with that, and then returned the favor, tossing a fat pitch to Derek Jeter, and in his final plate appearance, smacks a base hit into right field, and goes out with a bang. And you thought real theater happened on Broadway? That's what the Golf Digest says. So the truth probability. Before the Evan Meek's post-game comments, it was probably remote. After his post-game comments, quote, what better way to go out here at Yankee Stadium than to do what he did? I can't be upset about it. It was a great day for him, great day for Yankee fans, and a great day for baseball. If you don't remember, this was the last game of the season. Major League Baseball kind of made it in a moment, and it was supposed to originally, so this probably never happened, but what was supposed to happen is they were supposed to try and do sort of a Mariano Rivera type thing where everybody, like his core teammates like Andy Pettitte, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, they were all supposed to go out on the field and take him off together like they did with Mariano Rivera. And what happened is the Orioles came back in the top half of the ninth, and then Derek Jeter got a chance to win it and walk it off and take himself off the field. And I think that's definitely a real possibility. I think that one was what's supposed to happen. I don't think that this is the way that it was supposed to happen at all. But I think that's going to do it here for us at the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I've been your host, Patrick Kenny. Please follow us on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. Rate, follow, and review us. It's all free. We definitely look at all of the reviews and comments that y'all put on the YouTube videos. So please let us know what you guys like and what you don't like so we can improve this show for you. Thank you guys so much. My name has been Patrick Kenny. I hope you guys have a great rest of y'all's day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.